In today's episode of Paul's Old Crap, we're going to take a look at the Indy workstation released by Silicon Graphics. I got into computing as a hobby during the early 90s as a kid, and I remember wanting to one day own one of these expensive and unique-looking high-performance computers. Silicon Graphics were quite popular for their 3D capabilities and also started showing up in movies such as Congo, Jerry Maguire, The Peacemaker, and of course Jurassic Park. Silicon Graphics is also responsible for software technology we still use today, such as OpenGL and the XFS file system. Sometime in 2006, I was going eBay crazy and buying up old computer parts for fun, and I came across a stack of Indy workstations for pretty cheap. Of the original 4 or so units, I've got 2 working systems left. Now let's take a closer look at the Silicon Graphics Indy. Okay, so what I've got here are the pair of Silicon Graphics Indies that I currently own. The case for this, it's not really too crazy. It does look like the top half of the case is kind of like cut and sliding off the bottom half. They do have a little more outrageous designs for some of their later workstations. For hobbyists, I think this works pretty good. It's a fairly compact system, easy to store, and I actually quite enjoy owning it. Taking a look at the front of the system, we've got the power button and we've got volume up and down controls. When the system is turned on, there is a little LED light right in there which will turn green. If it stays red, I believe that means you have a problem. So taking a look at the back of the unit, we do have 3D glasses, standard video, audio output and inputs, composite video and S-video. These are inputs, I believe. For onboard Ethernet, we do have these 2 different types of connections here. We do have the input if you have an Indy cam, kind of like a webcam. We do have the PS2 keyboard and mouse ports. Important to make a note about how these are also the same type of plugs on earlier Silicon Graphics units, but they are not actually PS2. They are in the Indy, which means we can use a standard keyboard and mouse from any PC. Right next to that, we do have 2 serial ports, and parallel port, and your external SCSI. For the inside of the unit, we've got 2 drive bays right in here. I believe on most units, the SCSI hard drive would actually be found on the bottom of the 2, and the top would be either empty or contain a optical floppy drive of some sort. You won't really find a lot of those working these days. I believe a lot of people who collect SGI equipment have said that a lot of them are probably dead by now. Over here we've got a standard power supply. There were 2 types of power supplies available for the Indy systems. This one that I've got here is the worst of the 2. It's like a Nidec Power General. I'm not sure, I've never heard of them before. The other one that's available is a Sony power supply, and that one is said to be a lot more reliable than this one. But this one and the one in my spare Indy both work fine right now, so I'm just going to leave them as is. If one dies, I will just use the spare. Over here we've got a CPU module. This is a removable component. So when I did the upgrade for this the other day, I removed the R4600 133 MHz CPU and installed the R4400 200 MHz module. This is actually a bit larger than the one that was already in here. For memory, the Indy does have 8 slots total. That's 2 banks of 4 slots. It requires 72-pin RAM with FPM. Now the slots are also the gold, not tin, but it's kind of difficult to find that gold type RAM now, so I used ones that have the tin leads. Supposedly it'll work just fine. You might have to reseat the RAM every couple years, so we'll see how that goes. Over here is our video board, and this does also give us the connections for add-on cards. There are 2 expansion slots available. One of the units that I have did actually come with a second network card, but it was causing some problems during boot because it's different MAC address and some weirdness with the operating system, so I just removed it anyway. One thing to note, this is one of the versions of the 24-bit video. The other type is more powerful for R4400 and 4600 based systems. That is actually a 2-board combination, so I believe you would lose one, I think, of your expansion slots to do that. Something else I'll mention is, by now, the original clock battery is likely to be dead. It doesn't have a removable type of battery. If you are looking to use an Indy in modern times, what you'll probably have to do is either live with the fact that it won't keep your time, or deal with this, either by desoldering it and installing a replacement, or by cutting a section of this out and soldering in a new battery directly to the underlying metal contacts. Have fun with that one. So if you're looking at reviving an Sgi Indy and you're looking at using something other than old spinning disk, what you'll need is the SCSI to SD kit, and you should also get an active terminator for the rear port. It'll work without this, but I believe the SCSI bus in this particular system doesn't really like doing that. Now, something else I'll note, it does also have a terminator on the end of the cable, so you remove the resistor terminators that are actually in that socket there. For the micro SD card, you should probably use a class 10 card in order to get the maximum speed possible out of the SCSI bus. The video for this part might not be so great, but what we're going to do is configure the SCSI to SD for the options that we need. We need to plug in a USB cable from the SCSI to SD board into a Macintosh or Windows-based computer, and I've got the SCSI to SD utility up here right now. What you need to do is you go to the Window menu and go Show Log, and it brings up this window here, and it will tell you the capacity of the card you've got inserted for 512 byte sectors. Under the General Settings tab, what you'll need to have enabled is Enable Parity and Enable SCSI 2 mode. Everything else, just leave unchecked. Now what we do is we go to Device 1. This will basically be your single SCSI ID device. Go Enable SCSI Target. SCSI ID, generally it should just use number 1. It is a hard drive. Start sector is 0. Sector size in bytes is 512. Sector count, this number here is what you see in your log screen over here. So when you open up your log window, it says SD capacity, gives you that number for 512 byte sectors. Take that number, put it in here, it will tell you the size of your device. This is like 14.5 gigabyte, it's a 16 gigabyte card, so I guess that is probably close enough. These other devices should be disabled unless you actually want to have separate SCSI devices show up as different hard drives in the system. I don't want that, so device 1 is the only one I need. When you're done configuring all of those options, click the Save to Device. Alright, we should be ready to go for the next step. When it comes to installing IRIX on your Sgi Indy, you've got two options, one being a CD-ROM or the other over a network. The network method, I believe, is a lot more complicated than doing it from the CD-ROM. So, what I'm going to do is use an external CD-ROM drive connected to the SCSI port in the back of the Indy. The internals of this, it's just actually an Apple CD-ROM drive. It's the CD600, which I believe is a 4-speed drive. Alright, and now's the fun part where we turn the computer on. Once you turn on your system, you'll see that it fails to boot because we haven't installed anything yet. Click the Continue button down there. And then it comes back up to the main start screen. What we're going to do is we're going to enter the command monitor. From here, we type in HINV, hit enter. We'll see that our SCSI hard drive comes up as ID1, and our external SCSI CD-ROM drive comes up as ID4. One thing I'll note while we've got the screen up here, if you're wondering on the CPU support for your Indy, if you go and type in version, it'll tell you the PROM Monitor SGI version, and if it says revision B10, like this one does here, and it has the date code of 1996, your system will support the R5000 CPU. If it doesn't have that version and it's an earlier date, likely you'll need to update the version in order to use the newer 5000 series CPU. Now, it's not really an issue for this one because I'm using the R4400 anyway. What we're going to do here is install IRIX 6.5.22. Now, what you need to do is obtain the 6.5.22 overlay CDs as well as the 6.5 foundation CDs. In addition to this, you may also want to get the dev and application CDs, possibly the latest version. I'm not too sure how compatibility works. If you don't have a retail copy of these CDs, you can actually download them from a site called WinWorld. Die-hard SGI enthusiasts may not like that you do that, but the operating system is old enough. At this point, it's really too difficult to find an actual retail copy, so do what you must. So what you want to do is have your 6.5.22 overlays one disk inserted in the CD-ROM. Now, what we need to do is partition the hard drive before we go any further. So, boot-f dksc +0 SCSI ID 4 8 /arcs brings us to the next command. boot-f dksc 047 stand fx arcs-x device name dksc, sure. Controller is 0, yes. Drive number is 1, that is the SCSI ID we assigned to the SCSI to SD. Please choose 1. Let's see. You can actually see here, created default partitions. You can use repartition menu to manage. For this, I think we're just going to run with the defaults anyway, so you know what? I think that is good enough for this. Label info has changed, write up changes. Yes, please do. Now that we're back at this screen, we can actually click the Install System Software button. And it already has here, install from local SCSI CD-ROM drive 4. Yes, it already is inserted. Continue. Make a new file system. Yes. Are you sure? Yes. Block size of file system, we previously entered 512, so we're going to roll with that. Now that you've arrived at the installation menu, what we need to do is basically tell the installer what CD-ROMs we have. So, for each CD-ROM, type in open, and then CD-ROM disk. Bunch of information. And now it'll go to reading all of the files that are on the CD. So now it's asking me if we want to, let's see, we'll change the feature stream later. What we're going to do is continue on with every other CD we have. So before you type done, what you want to do is insert every other CD you've got. And when you're done, then you type done. So I'm going to skip ahead to that. No point filming the entire thing. Okay, so I've finished reading from all the CDs. What I'm going to do is I'm going to change to the feature stream, just because. So install feature, select feature stream. Yes. Alright, I think it's ready to go. I might run into conflicts, but if we type in go, we'll find out. Yes, we have some conflicts. Let's try with also install that, also install. That one doesn't have the right 3A. might not have the right version of the CDs to do this. So in which case, I will probably opt to not install the packages it's complaining about. So you just basically, you have the multiple options. So if you do conflicts 1A, the option is to do not install. So we'll do that with that one. One more. Now it's complaining about a lot of the developer packages. I guess we will go ahead and bypass all of those as well. So there's multiple versions of the developer CD, so I think I've got the wrong one originally. And now that I've opted to not install a lot of these dev packages, we now have no conflicts. Go! Let's find out what happens. I've already installed this on this machine in the past, so I'm not going to bother recording this entire process. It's going to ask me for all of the CDs and probably take a couple hours to actually do the install. So I will pick up again when it's complete. Alright, so after the installation has completed and you've restarted the system, what we're going to do first is go into the Easy Setup area. Basically just go to set up the network. I'm not going to bother with root password or user accounts or anything like that right now. Ethernet ECO, default on board. I'm not going to use DHCP. I'm going to specify this myself. I think this net mask is correct. Yeah, it should be fine. And time to restart. Okay, so we've rebooted the system, logged in as root. If we go to the system manager and look at the information on the system, we do have our workstation name. We've called it Indy box. We've got our IP address set. Tells us the CPU 200 megahertz, MIPS 4400, 256 megabytes of RAM. We're looking good here. Now, if we open up our console and if we try to ping the default gateway for this network, I do have ping response. However, the default gateway is not actually set in the system. You have to go and do that manually. So we go into ATC config static route options. Alright, I'm just going to add this to the top of the file. Dealing with VI is such a pain in the ass, so route quiet add net default and address network. Stop the network. Oh no, what happened there? Oh, your network is down. Start the network. Something else I forgot to do. Your resolvers. Let's see. That's good enough. If we ping Google, it resolves the domain, and we have external connectivity. Perfect. Oh, and just to demonstrate browsing the web, although you probably won't be able to browse a whole lot of websites on a system this old. I do keep a a site running that's designed specifically for older systems for demonstration purposes and whatnot. So as soon as the browser actually opens up, we'll take a look at that. Oh, I can't resolve home.netscape.com. Strange. I wonder why that is. I go to altexanet.org. What do you know? We're on the internet. Alright, so getting back to things here, I spent the last few hours downloading a bunch of random applications and doing some customization. So we're going to run through some of the application software I managed to find for this thing. First thing I've got here is Corel Wordperfect. I was just toying around with this thing. I think the requirements for this started off at IRIX 5.2 or 5.3. It still runs in 6.5, although it's got some weirdness here. I don't know why there's a red background for these elements. If I go to the different color options here, come on. Interesting. I think I made it mad. They were just basically showing all red, so for whatever reason, I don't know what the deal is, but yes. Yeah, so just must be a glitch somewhere, but don't know what the deal is. It still works as a word processor, so get out of here, delete that element. Pretty basic, nothing special. Alright, the next application we've got here is Adobe Photoshop 3.0. There's really not much special about this. It works and looks pretty much like the older versions I remember on the old Macintosh computers. I don't have a license for this, so it's currently running in demonstration mode. I think the limitations are you can't save or export files. So, I mean, like, I don't really plan on using this for anything anyway, but, you know. Hello. Yeah. So the next little bit of fun I've got here is Soft Windows version 2.0, which gives you MS-DOS and Windows 3.1 emulation. So we've got the DOS console up right now. Let's fire it up. So you've pretty much got all of the standard options that you would have on any normal Windows 3.1 install. There is a Windows idle detection, some custom stuff for soft Windows, but other than that, it's pretty much like you'd expect any Windows 3.1 install to look like. Not really much to do in here. Back in the day when you're dealing with compatibility with Windows systems, this might have been useful, but now there's really no point to it except just for fun. I think the only reason I've ever fired this up before was to actually play solitaire. And, you know, that's about it. Alright, so what we're looking at right now is a flight simulator that's included in a large archive of demo software of some sort. I don't really know what I'm doing here, so I'm just gonna make this thing move a bit. Where am I? You crashed into the swamps. Okay. Give me another plane. How do I view? You retracted the landing gear while on the ground. What the hell? Oh my god. Wingman view toggle. Increase flaps. Okay. Crap. Alright. Plane. Give me some help. I don't know how I'm supposed to fly this thing. Whatever. There's a bunch of other things in here. Not really too sure what they are. Let's take a look. Mandel. Alright. I noticed there's Doom, but it kept on crashing for me, so I'll open this up. If I try to resize the screen, I noticed it was crashing, so let's just let it do its thing here. Oh, okay, well it crashed again. So, who knows about that? I have no idea. Oops. Go away. So another Adobe product we've got here is Illustrator, version 5.5. Again, I don't have a license for this one, so I believe it's got some restrictions on it. I think it's just installed as a demo version right now, but yeah, I don't really do graphics that much at all, but if you needed to do, I guess, vector art, this is one way you could do it. So, yeah, that's kind of neat. So, I guess it does let you save, even though it's in demonstration mode, so, I don't know. Alright, and the last thing I've got here is the FSN. It's the 3D file browser that we saw in Jurassic Park, being used as if it was zooming through the various buildings. So, I mean, a video about SGI wouldn't be complete without someone saying, "It's a Unix system, I know this," and then watching a spotlight come down on various files as you jump between buildings, you know. Basically, FSN is just a utility that I think was actually developed by Silicon Graphics themselves. It was just kind of like a trial, or not like a trial, but some sort of a demonstration program. So there's copies out there that still run on IRIX 6.5, and yeah, it's just basically you throw it in whatever directory, and I think what it does is it builds its database based on anything within that directory, and then all subdirectories below that. So, but yeah, I mean, it was kind of neat getting this working, but you know, there's not really anything else that I would really use this for other than pretending like I'm zooming through Jurassic Park buildings. So, yeah, that's FSN. So I think my final word on the Sgi Indy is that it's a neat system to play around with as a hobbyist, but there's really not much else you can do with it with modern applications. What I've got running right here is I wouldn't really say it's new version of Firefox, because I think the build on that one is probably about 5 or 6 years old. This is part of a project, it's called NecoWare. Community, the SGI, well, what's remaining of the SGI community has been porting open source packages over to IRIX. A lot of the stuff that's on there now is MIPS 4 based, which would be the R5000 CPU, I guess, and up. So in here I'm only running the R4400, which is the MIPS 3 generation. So the available software that's out there that this thing can still run, most of it is fairly old. I mean, not as old as the system itself, but with an old browser like this, I can get to Google, but then beyond that, there's sites that I wouldn't be able to get to because of the old like SSL ciphers and stuff like that. So for example, if I go to one of my own domains, no common encryption algorithms. So this is something that you probably run into quite a few times, and it would only be the I guess I wouldn't say less secure, but sites that allow even older algorithms. That would basically be the only type of site that this browser could still get to. So I mean, for browsing the web, it's not really practical at all. It's just fun to toy around with, and there's a decent amount of software that I'm finding online, and I can throw on here. There's copies of Doom and Quake. Like there's Quake and Quake 2, but you need to go and get like the WAD files and stuff yourself. The archives don't actually include it. So I mean, that's something I'll do in the future. Toy around with that a bit. But yeah, I mean, it's a neat system to play around with, and I definitely enjoyed getting more experience with the IRIX operating system by doing the install from scratch, and I did that more than once. For CPU wise, I'm probably just going to leave the R4400 in there. One thing I was going to mention earlier, where if I did upgrade this to the R5000, I would have to reinstall IRIX because it would need a different set of libraries, but I've got it set up decently right now, so I don't think I'm going to sink any more money into this. I'm just going to play around with it as is, and I don't know, I might make a follow-up video if I find some more neat applications, but I don't know. But yeah, if you're interested in playing around with an SGI, starting off with an Indy would be a decent base unit to start off with. If you do have a lot more money than I do, then you can afford the more modern, well, the newer versions of the workstations that have like the R10,000 or R12,000 CPUs, and those things you can get a little further with these applications that I'm getting on this one, but it didn't really cost me a lot of money to get this whole system the way I've got it now. So yeah, neat to play around with, but that's about it. So until any follow-up videos are done, I guess that's it for my SGI stuff. Thank you for watching.